Hey guys, Steph the Illuminated Nerd here. Today we're going to be talking about the differences between the AMD and the Intel platform and how you can best choose which one fits better for your use case. So let's get right into it. So nowadays, the AMD systems with the Ryzen architecture have in a way caught up with the Intel platform. And although they have some differences, you don't really have to be so picky or choosy about going with one or the other. If you want to go with the AMD because it's generally a less expensive platform, that's generally okay, and you don't have to go for the more expensive Intel system just because you want a gaming system. But with that being said, the main differences between an AMD and an Intel platform with the most latest architectures is that the AMD platforms have more cores and lower clock speeds, and the Intel platform have less cores and higher clock speeds. So the clock speed is the gigahertz, the speed that a single core will run a piece of software. So when you're running a game, your game is usually using 1, 2, maybe 3 cores. Like the main game programming is probably just using 1 core, and maybe they're using another one for the audio or the graphics or whatnot. But generally speaking, your computer is using really only a few cores at most for like 99% of all the games out there nowadays, which is why Intel with a higher clock speed will operate those games at a higher performance than a comparable AMD platform that tends to have lower clock speeds and more cores that cannot take advantage of the fact that the games only use a few cores. So with that being said, there are some pieces of software that do take advantage of having, 8 or 12 or whatever cores, and that's things like video rendering or 3D rendering, such as using Adobe Premiere or some of the Adobe products, or for example, if you're a software developer and you use Docker and you have virtual environments that are multiple virtual environments that you run to do your software development, then more cores is better. And also, if you're someone who does a fair amount of live streaming, more cores is better because you need more cores to handle, you need some cores to handle your gaming, but then you also need extra cores to handle processing the live streaming and encoding that video at a reasonable rate. So for live streaming, the AMD platform is generally better with more cores. So if you're literally using your computer for purely gaming, and you don't plan on doing any live streaming or any video rendering, it's really just for gaming, then yes, absolutely, the Intel platform will be a better platform to target. You will get faster frames per second, obviously if you tie it with a great video card, but the gap has become so narrow lately between the Intel and the AMD platforms that personally I prefer the AMD platform, and having a slightly lower clock speed, and I overclocked my system so that I can get a 4 gigahertz clock speed, but having those extra cores because I do use Adobe Premiere for rendering and streaming and that kind of software and software development. But again, if you do have an Intel system, it's going to be great for playing video games, and that's what it's best at. There is also the fact that generally the AMD platform, the CPUs are almost half the cost usually of the Intel platform. Now, of course, there's some, comparisons that might differ there, but that is the general rule of thumb. AMD platform has always been less expensive, so I feel you get more bang for your buck by going with an AMD system, and that the money that you're saving by not getting the Intel platform, you can put that extra money from that CPU that you saved and get a much better video card, and you'll generally get that much better performance in games from having that better video card and all those extra cores in case you do end up wanting to do live streaming, or you want to start doing video rendering or 3D rendering or that kind of stuff. So anyways, that's my opinion on AMD versus Intel, and I hope you learned something and have a good one.